testing showcase. And happy Friday. We're going to kick things off with a demo from Remesh, and I have Maria here. A few housekeeping notes. We have a chat box and a Q&A box. So please put all of your questions throughout the session in that Q&A box. And at the end of the session, Maria can go over them live. In that chat box, feel free to put any connections. Right now, we'd love to know where everyone is tuning in from. So make sure you drop your city there. But Maria, I will go ahead and kick it over to you and get the showcase started.
Thank you so much, Kara. Happy Friday to everyone. Really excited to spend the next few minutes with you, telling you a little bit about Remesh and how Remesh can help you understand your audience in minutes from the point of view of ad testing as the use case. I'm Maria Noesi. I'm the head of marketing here on the Remesh team. So as we dive in, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Remesh mission and our vision, which extends beyond the market research space and really in just focusing on helping folks understand a population instantly, whether that is your consumers, your employees, or even your community. But in the context of market research, one of the sort of opportunities we saw for the Remesh platform is that traditional methodologies does have some drawbacks that Remesh can really help with. For example, with focus groups, while it is really great at giving you deep qualitative understanding, there are some drawbacks around groupthink or bias, especially if you have a disruptive participant in your focus group. Also, the scale, you can't, typically focus groups are 10 or 20 participants. And when it comes to survey, really, you can have that statistical significance, but you don't tend to get that rich qualitative insights that you get from a focus group. And of course, there's less flexibility in being able to pivot or adjust the conversation based on what you're hearing from your audience. And so that's where Remesh really comes in, and this opportunity to give you rich qualitative insights at scale. So hundreds of people that you can connect with at once, while still capturing quantitative data, allowing you as a research to segment your participant, giving you the flexibility to pivot and adjust the conversation on the fly. And of course, limiting some of the bias that can happen from groupthink and having a small group of people together giving feedback in a focus group. So the flavors of Remesh really comes in two sort of product offerings. One is the live conversation aspect, which is very similar to a focus group. You as a moderator are talking and connecting with hundreds of people at once, even up to 1,000 participants in a conversation, and you're able to drive it much like a focus group where you're asking questions, you're able to adjust on the fly. And then you also have the flex experience, which is more about letting participants come in and out of the conversation at their convenience. So a little bit similar to a survey in that way, where you as a participant can join, answer, and then sort of kind of continue on with the rest as other participants come in. And in the flex conversation, you can have up to 5,000 participants. So in both of the Remesh product, you're going to have scale really be at the center of it, and in being able to really translate qualitative data into quantitative insights for you. Today, we're going to focus on the live experience and having a live conversation with our audience. We tend to work across multiple different use cases, from foundational research to claims and RTB testing. For the focus of today's showcase, we are going to be looking at the ad testing use case and seeing how you can set up a Remesh conversation, connect with a really large audience, and being able to really capture feedback live from that group. So without further delay, I want to start diving into the platform and really showing you what it looks like to have an audience coming in, showing them different creatives, and capturing that qualitative data in real time. So I'm going to show you now transition over to the Remesh platform. We actually have a few minutes before the conversation starts. So I have prepared a conversation that is about 15 minutes long. It's going to have a real live audience present. So we're going to have roughly between 50 up to 100 participants join into the conversation. We're going to ask them questions, both quantitative questions and qualitative questions about different ad creative concepts that we have created in advance. We are playing the role of a brand new coffee company that is starting to test new ads for a bus stop campaign that we're doing. And so we're going to be asking questions from that point of view. Now, I'm also going to be showing you what the participant experience looks like. It's really good to see how participants are going to be responding and engaging with the questions you've prepared for them. As a moderator, I've given myself some homework in advance to make this as easy as an experience as possible. So I prepared an entire discussion guide to walk my audience through. This helps me just focus on what the audience is saying and less about managing the conversation. So this discussion guide is what you'll see on the left side of your screen. I've added everything from welcome message, instructions for the audience to let them know what they can expect over the next few minutes. I've also added in all of my creative in advance so that it's already pre-programmed into the discussion guide, and we can walk through the conversation in order. However, the flexibility of Remesh is that I can choose to send any part of the conversation at any point in time. I can pick and choose certain pieces to send to the audience. If I see that the conversation is going in a direction that is different from the original discussion guide, I can make those adjustments in real time. I also have the ability to come up with new questions in real time. So again, if we see something interesting as the conversation is happening, I can send a quick follow-up, or I can send additional clarification instructions for the participants. All of that can be customized and again, changed in real time. Now, one of the other great things is that I am the moderator for the conversation, but I can also invite my colleagues to be part of this experience. I can also invite clients if I'm doing a project for a client, and I can give them a view of the Remesh platform where they can see everything happening in real time. We will also have the ability to communicate throughout the session. So if this is a 60-minute session, our participants will have a link, and then our observers or stakeholders will have a view where they can see the data and we can communicate. And I will show you how all of that works in a few minutes. So for example, one really popular instance that we see with our customers is that if you're testing ad creatives and you're looking at a specific concept, and something interesting comes up where the audience has a really valid feedback of something different they would like to see. Maybe if your creative team is on the call, they're able to make those changes in real time to the concept, to the creative. You can re-upload it, send it back to your audience, and then continue capturing feedback to see if the changes you've made are moving the audience in the right direction or speak to the feedback that you received. Now, we're about a minute to go. I want to just hop over to the participant side so you can see what that would look like as a participant who's joining the conversation. When I click on the participant link, I am thrown into the screen. I accept some initial policy information, and then I begin some onboarding polls. These are just questions that help segment the audience better on the back end, helps you understand who the audience is. You can set up as many onboarding polls as you'd like. We recommend typically no more than 10 to really make it an engaging experience for our participants. And then once we're done with the onboarding polls, if the conversation hasn't yet started, I as a participant will sit in this waiting room for the remaining time. And once the timer runs out, I'll be able to join the conversation and start entering the platform here. So we're just a few seconds away, and let's see who we have in the group joining us. Great, I'm also going to go ahead and join. Okay, we're going to give the participants a few seconds. And so once the participants are able to join the conversation, that's when you start seeing the data being populated for you. So you can see the poll questions being populated for you, the so you can sort of see the breakdown of how the audience is coming in. For example, so we'll give it a few seconds to see where our audience is. And begin. What you'll see is that the discussion guide on the left allows us to start asking questions or sending instructions to the audience. So for example, I can start sending a welcome message and giving them a heads up that we'll get started in just a few minutes. So we can also make sure to send instructions to the participants. So it's important to make sure that you explain to the participants what they can expect between the different question types that they'll see on Remesh, from open-ended questions to the poll questions that they may see. And I also send them an image so that they can see exactly what that experience would look like. So if they click on the image, they can see that they are going to be responding in their own words with a chat-based experience, and then they'll be voting on other responses as the conversation happens. So in this scenario, once we're ready, we can go ahead and ask the audience. I think some of our audience is lagging behind, which is okay. We're gonna still be able to give you a real live example of how the questions are asked, how as a moderator you're able to see the data happening in real time. We're gonna go and send, are you ready to get started? So it's just a quick poll. As you can see, we set a timer for each question. It can range for a poll question between 15 seconds to 30 seconds, depending on how many poll options you have. You always want to give the participants enough time to respond so that they can read the question thoroughly and read the options thoroughly. Now, we can go right ahead, and in this scenario, if we're talking about ad concepts, we're going to dive right in and set the stage. So in this conversation, we want to ask for feedback around different ad concepts for our new brand called GapFest. And we want to start with our first concept. Here we go. And again, we just want to do some context setting, letting them know that these ads will be displayed at a bus stop. So we're going to send them an image so they can then, as the participant, come in and click on it to see, okay, I understand where the ads that I'm going to be shown, where they're going to be displayed. You could send video as well. So it's not just images. You can send videos so to give them some instructions about what to expect. And so let's go ahead and send the first ad concept that we have prepared. Great. So we also recommend that as you're doing concept testing and are sharing stimuli, that you give them a second to absorb the image before sending them an actual question. So we're going to go ahead and give them a few seconds to look at the image for our participants, and then we're going to immediately ask them a question. What do you think about this ad display? So as a participant, I am able to respond, submit. I am a fan of the first ad concept. The data is populating in real time. So imagine hundreds of people being able to submit that response. You're seeing the data coming in. If you wanted to analyze that data by your segments, you can. So right now I can go ahead and see how our millennials would respond versus our Gen Z audience. And then once the timer runs out, I can continue on with my next question. So here's where the magic of Remesh really comes in, is that I asked a quantitative question. I can see the percent of people that agreed, who chose a specific answer. I can then follow up and ask them why, or ask them to be more specific about their response. So in this case, I want to send a tailored follow-up, right? I want to send a question to the people who loved it or liked it. Very specific. I want to send a specific question to the folks that felt neutral about it. And then I want to ask a question specifically to the folks that disliked it or hated, because I want my follow-up to be tailored and elicit responses from that group and not ask them a question that might not be relevant to them. Like, I don't want to ask the dislike it or hate it group what they loved about the ad concept. I'm more interested in knowing, okay, tell me more about what you liked or did not like. So again, let's go ahead and see that happening. So I selected in the previous poll that I loved this first ad concept. So my follow-up question that I'm receiving is, tell me specifically what you love about this ad concept. So I'm going to go ahead and say the colors and the overall style. Now you can see the timer. This timer is letting me know how much time I have left to respond before I move on into sort of the next part of the Remesh experience, which is the voting exercise. Now, if there were other responses in the group, I would be seeing immediately after I submit other responses from the audience who also said they loved it in the previous poll questions, and only those. And I would be able to vote on those responses. I would be able to say whether I agreed or disagreed with this response. I would be able to choose from 2 different responses, which one I preferred. And that's really how our algorithm learns about my preferences and can analyze the other responses and really take the power of the crowd to see where there's consensus, where there's disagreement, and you as a moderator can see all of that data coming in real time. So as participants respond, then they go through the voting exercises, all of that data is updating in real time, and you would see generally an agreement score that we'll see on the screen in just a moment for the one response I submitted, that tells you how much I agree with that response or how much another participant would have agreed to that response. So that's the agreement score. Again, I imagine that in the volume of having 100 to 200 participants on our call, how valuable that information is to know that what certain phrases or words are really standing out to the audience. Now, again, you can analyze this data and see how a specific segment responded to it. So I can dive in and say, okay, how did that millennial audience responded, if that's who I'm really trying to focus on, or maybe I want to look at Gen X. I'm also able to create a segment on the fly. So if, for example, I wanted to create a segment of the folks who responded love it to a previous poll question, I can go ahead and create a segment and say, okay, let's find the folks who originally responded love it to the ad. I'm going to create that segment. And then I can go ahead and analyze the data for any other question using that segment. So you can come here and see how a love it group would have responded to the data. Now, let's go ahead and continue with the ad concepts. I want to show you how you can go through multiple concepts in one session really quickly and get all of that feedback. So it's great to always keep it conversational. So some words of encouragement. If you have hundreds of people in the call, to tell them you're doing great so far. Again, we want to humanize that experience so that they don't think it's a chat bot or an automated sort of experience, that there's a real human behind them. So let's go ahead and look at concept B. Same thing, give them the prompt, send them the visual so that they can take a moment, zoom in, look at it, see what they like, see what they don't like about it. And then I can go ahead and follow the similar format of asking the questions that I asked for the first concept. What do you think about this ad? The participant, again, would be able to respond in their own words. So I'm going to choose to say that I feel neutral about this concept B. I'm a big fan of the simplicity of concept A. And as the timer comes down, again, I'm able to see the responses in real time. And I could choose to continue to follow my discussion guide, right? And ask them the open-ended question of like, let's dive in and find out for the Love It group, what you loved about it, what you would improve if you felt like you were neutral. So as a neutral person, this is the question that I should now see on my end. Tell me specifically what would have to change to make this ad concept more likable to you. And the participant can say, it feels too busy, more simplicity would be helpful. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and submit my response. And again, I would then be able to vote on the responses from everyone else who also felt neutral about that ad and kind of say whether I agree or disagree. So you can hone in on, for the neutral, what were the things that really could be improved? What changes can we make? Now, if we had our stakeholders, like I mentioned earlier, whether it's our creative team or our clients, we could have a conversation in real time about the responses. So if we are noticing that the majority of our audience feels like things could be improved for ad concept B, and we see some really interesting responses, we would start that response to market, hey, this is interesting. And then I can go into the back room and see that someone has marked that response. I can go ahead and comment. Maybe I'm the creative director for this ad, and say, okay, let's revisit this response later. Or maybe I want to make a change in the moment. So you're able to have that conversation in the back room and being able to sort of look, oh, like this is a very interesting tidbit, or great, this is really the feedback that we were looking to validate as part of this conversation. Now, I'm going to jump into the third concept and the final concept. And what I'll do at the end is I'm going to show you how you can then compare all of the different concepts together to, again, kind of really dive into the qualitative responses from your audience to see of the three, which is resonating, which is not resonating. So this is our third and final concept. Same format. We're going to ask them what they think of this ad. And again, we're going to go ahead and flip over to the participant experience and say that we disliked it. Now, if you as a participant jumped in the middle of the conversation, you would jump in right to where the conversation is happening. So if you joined a little bit late, you as the participant would be joining in exactly where the conversation is happening because it is a live event. And again, we're going to follow up with our audience to ask them, tell me a little bit more. Tell me the why behind the why. You've told me you don't like it, or you told me you loved it. Give me some details, what it is that you love, where can we improve, and what do you absolutely hate about this ad concept? Again, I'm going to go ahead and look at our ad concept. Again, I'm going to keep my similar theme, feels too busy, and I'm going to go ahead and submit it. Again, watching my timer, making sure that I have enough time to respond. People can get very thoughtful in what they're saying. You can have paragraph responses of people really telling you what they think, which is really valuable. Now, once the timer runs out, again, you can analyze all of this data. And for the qualitative data, you can look at it also like by the segment, but you can analyze sort of the percent agreement score for the entire group and see which responses are most agreeable to the entire audience, which responses are agreeable to a subgroup. You can sort of kind of dive in, especially with your segment, really narrow it into a particular audience. So we'll give the audience a few seconds, and then we'll move into sort of the final step, which is just asking them, out of the three concepts we went through today, which ones are your favorite? What did you like about them? And I'll show you a different sort of quantitative question type that you can ask that's different than just your traditional poll, that is helpful, especially when you're going through multiple different concepts at once. Just have a few seconds. And again, just showing you as the answers are coming in. So I fell into the dislike it group. Once my answer is in, I can see again, what are some of the common topics? So if there were questions that if there was a theme that everybody thought it was too busy, I would be able to dive in and pull up all of the questions or all the responses that said too busy. If there was a theme of love the colors or love the words and the message, you can filter and just focus on those responses and then see what the agreement score would be for those responses across that group that saw that answer or that voted on that answer. Okay, so we're going to tell our audience now we'd like to compare the 3 different ad concepts, and we're going to show it to them again. Again, I practiced in advance to make it easier for myself. All 3 ads are there. As a participant, I can, again, open them up, take a moment to look at them, and then as a moderator, I'm going to go ahead and send them and ask them to rank them. So instead of just telling me which one they love the most, I'm going to ask them to rank the concepts. So 1 was my favorite, 2 was my second favorite, and 3 was my least favorite. If I made a mistake, I can deselect and switch my responses up. I'll go ahead and submit. And then on the back end, that data is going to continue to update in real time. It's going to tell you how many participants have responded. And then once the timer has run out, I can then see the final ranking scores for that question. And then we're going to wrap up with one final question, because we are always interested in sort of the verbatim responses from our audience, and just asking them what specifically stood out to them from their top choice versus the other 2. So again, you can program the conversation as much as you'd like to in advance. Again, that makes it easier as a moderator to navigate the conversation, but you can always pivot. So you can always transition if we felt that number 1 was a clear winner and number 3 was not a favorite at all. We could have changed the order and said, just compare 1 and 2, or just compare 1 and 3. You can make changes as the conversation is happening. So again, we're asking the final question. I'll show you what the participant experience would have looked like on our end. Again, simplicity is what I love, color, and that's it. So at the end of the conversation, we would thank our participants for joining us, and then you'd be able to export all of this data for further analysis. We also have an analyze dashboard where you can create visuals for specific questions. You can export them for further analysis or to add them into a deck to show with your stakeholders. So again, you can analyze in real time, then be able to export that data and also create some additional visuals. I'm going to pause there and again, just sort of end on this slide that really the goal of Remesh is to give you the qualitative insights at scale, being able to give you rich responses from hundreds of people at once in a way that you can act on it immediately and have the data and the results behind it to be able to talk about it. So imagine virtual focus group at scale. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions and turn it over to Kara.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Maria. That was really, thorough. And it looks like such an intuitive platform, which is great to see. Very easy to use from your customer's perspective, and I'm sure from the user's perspective as well. So wonderful. We have just a couple minutes, like a minute and a half for questions. So please drop them in the chat if you have any. I have a couple here. Can you talk a little more about how the participants are vetted?
Yeah, so many of our clients will bring in their own participants into the conversation, but if you needed Remesh to source those participants, we work with qualitative research panels to bring in participants that are used to qualitative research exercises, and they'll go through the traditional screening process to make sure that they meet your audience criteria. Great question.
Great, that's awesome. And then can you talk about what's the minimum number of participants that you'd recommend, like in a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, so the sort of, again, you can have up to 1,000 participants in a conversation. I would say the best practice would be about 50. So just 50 or more, you're going to get that rich power of Remesh. And I would say the minimum would be about 25 to 30 to really have the participant be able to respond and then engage in enough voting exercises to help the algorithm learn about the group as a whole.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. We are right at the end of time, but feel free if anybody has questions, reach out to Maria. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the walkthrough. It was really excellent to see it firsthand. So I appreciate it. And we'll see everybody in the next session.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.